Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with the legend, David Wyndorf, a monster magnet, to talk about the new record, A Better Dystopia, out May 21st on Napalm Records. How's things going?
What up, man? There's a giant bee in my kitchen. I opened the door for 5 minutes and this fucking bee, it's like 3 inches long, just flew through the door and it's hovering like a B-52 bomber around my kitchen.
I hope you're not allergic.
And we'll find out, won't we?
Oh, that would make for a great video.
Yeah, it would be great. My eyes like bulging out and then they go into a seizure.
Yeah, it would make for a great video, that's for sure. Let me start off by asking you this. Is this the album that nobody knew that they needed, and now everybody's going to be happy that they're going to get it?
You know, I like your style. Yes. Can I quote you on that? That's exactly what it is.
You can 100% quote me on that.
It's the it's the pandemic album. It's the one that like I didn't hear when the whole time. Well, you know, it's weird. It's like I did this record because I didn't feel like writing a new record in between tours. We got a tour canceled on us, and I just wanted to stay in action.
Yeah.
So instead of sitting down and writing, which would have been kind of a bummer during a lockdown, I was like, let's just go and do a record ourselves really quick and do a bunch of cool songs that sound like they're from a very paranoid time. And so I picked a bunch of songs that I knew personally from another very paranoid time in history. And was like, all right, this will be the Corona record.
So the idea for this album started during the pandemic?
Yeah.
So there was no thoughts of you doing something like this like a year ago or just a little bit over a year ago?
Not a cover record, but I mean, I'm always doing cover songs here and there, but never like a whole record of covers. Now, I think if it wasn't for the Corona thing, I probably would have just gone ahead and written the next Monster Magnet record. This seemed like a perfect way to stay busy during the lockdown, which will drive you nuts, as everybody knows. And number two, make a statement about cool old music. And number three, make a statement about our times as well, saying that, you know, from personal experience, I was there at another time where the media had called that the world was going to hell, you know, and it was like, you know, crazy revolution, riots, you know, crazy politics, plus a disease now or the virus. And I really thought the pop culture responded to paranoid times a lot better back then than it did now. Yeah. Because the whole Trump time and the Corona time, I didn't see one cool record come out. Not one.
It didn't inspire people in the right way, perhaps.
Sometimes I think that maybe as a society, the mass of people have moved from paying close attention to art and letting art express their feelings for them to actually expressing them themselves through typed words.
Yeah, I think also there's this complete disconnect between fans, media, bands, and in terms of the times that we live, that sometimes with everybody now having control of what they say and getting their message out there, perhaps there's a little bit of a fear of sometimes dipping the toes in uncharted waters for some bands, so they rather just stay away from it altogether.
Yeah, I mean, that used to be a point of pride to dip your toe.
Exactly.
And now it's like, oh, well, you know, don't screw with the money flow.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know what these people are worried about. Nobody gives a shit about them anyway. You know what I mean? There's bigger fish to fry. It's like if rock music can't like make a stand, if you can't make a stand with rock music,
what's left?
There's nothing left, and nobody's gonna care. I remember I did this. It's funny you mentioned it because I did a flyer when we canceled a tour that we were going to do, North America tour, Canada included.
Yeah, you guys were coming to Toronto. I was going to be at the show.
Yeah, and I was all psyched. I was like, yeah, and then we had to cancel it. And I did a flyer, and it was a cartoon by this great old illustrator named Basil Wolverton of like kind of an old school plague scene. And I had people like walking around all screwed up. I was like, Corona tour canceled. And my own record company freaked out. They were like, that's insensitive. I was like, it's rock. What do you mean it's insensitive?
The two things don't really go together.
I was like, you put out albums by band that talk about going straight to hell and living in like, you know, and like, oh no, it's too insensitive. I was like, get over it, man.
I know the lines are getting drawn in very weird places. You know what I mean? And people keep moving them depending on what fits their agenda. And but going back to the record, because we could be here all day talking about this shit.
Yeah, we could. I know.
Going back to the record, what is the biggest challenge when it comes to making an all covers album versus a regular Monster Magnet album?
In my case, it was like, how can we make a covers album that doesn't sound like a covers album? You know, I mean, I love doing cool covers, but I've never done them all in a row before. Usually they're saved for like the back of a B-side or some sort of bonus track or something included in with a bunch of originals. I was afraid of doing an album that just looked like I was in it just to pass the time or to, you know, try to, you know, save my place at the rock table during the pandemic, which is partially true. You want to save your place at the table of rock. So when the restaurant of rock opens again, guess who's still here?
You have a reserved spot.
I have a reserved spot. But I thought there was a way that we could do it and own it as a Monster Magnet album, pulling from the very type of music that inspired me to start Monster Magnet in the first place. But not do it in the obvious ways, not pick the heavyweights like Zeppelin or Sabbath. Pull from below, the fourth dimension, there was a weird like Twilight Zone of rock that was going on when I was a little kid that sometimes I think I was the only one that knew about it. I was such a mutant when I was a kid, you know, record store guy, like 12 years old. And I had enough. And I was like, you know, I think we could pull this off. I think we can make a Magnet record that's full of songs that were just happened to be written by other people rather than going, hey, look at me, I'm doing a Communication Breakdown, or look, I'm doing Iron Man, you know, which the world does not need another version.
Oh, no. I thought you picked great songs because from my perspective, I didn't know these songs as the originals. So when I listened to the album, I was like, this could totally be a Monster Magnet record. I mean, if like for me personally, it was like, this was a brand new album. I had never heard. I mean, these were some really deep cuts you went with on this album.
I go deep. I'm like, I love it.
I was like, wow, where did he find this stuff? So the question I have for you is, what made these songs special? Was there something in these tracks that kind of glues them together and makes them special for a record like this?
Yeah, for me, it's like there's an overbearing sense of insanity to all those songs. Most of them are either kind of off kilter. There's something wrong with the guy who's singing them, like, you know, it's like, and if you notice, I think more than one vocalist or more than one song mentions the guy's brain in the song, like my brain. It's part of that late 60s, early 70s paranoia that went on back then, where people mentioned their brains a lot in their music. And you don't really know what's going on in the song. They're ambiguous. You don't know exactly what these guys are saying. I like that kind of insanity, and they all rock too. It's like it wasn't like I picked these drippy flower power stuff. It was more driving, and kind of teenage, early 70s teenage angst. And I thought that brought it all together for me as where these songs could work together, that they were coming from the same place.
Another element about this record that I thought was interesting is that not only the songs feel like one of your original records, the way you structure the album together, it has the fluidity of a Monster Magnet album. It doesn't come across as a compilation style record where the songs kind of feel, you know, disconnected one from the other. This record, the moment you press play, you're in it. I mean, you're in it for the long haul. So how much work went into making the track listing the way it is in order to have that sense of a full-length album?
You have good ears, my friend. And I'm glad you're listening, because that was the thing I was sweating the most. I was like, you could pick good songs from now till doomsday, but if it sounds like a compilation record that you could just buy in a store, any compilation record, well, then you failed, you know? So I kept going over in my head, what songs could I sing, basically? What songs could I sing well? And kicked off any songs that I couldn't sing well. I mean, some of these bands, the guys are so good at singing, I couldn't do that. There were a lot of bands that I would love to do, but I just can't hack it. The register's too high, like I can't do that shit. So that was one. Like, can the singer sing these songs? I always put myself outside. Can the singer sing the song? And can these songs be arranged in a way where it's making sense, where it's going to take you on a little journey, where somebody's not going to put it on in their car and go, like as soon as the next song comes up, that's not what I want to hear. Like you don't want to sound like you're changing the station on the radio. So I picked songs that had a little bit similar chords, but then again, I always like the same chords. They all had the same vibe, so I knew they would work. And then I carefully, in my head, started doing a sequence. Even before I gave the songs to the band, I started making a sequence. And I kept going, all right, what does it need here? What does it need there? I was like, okay, the album needs a break. I'll do a little song. And then picked a little song to fit that spot. And I almost blew it, because some of the songs at the latter half of the record are a little bit more modern than the songs at the beginning, but I think I pulled it off.
No, you definitely pulled it off. Like I said, for me, the two things that I took from it is that, one, it sounds like a Monster Magnet record. It doesn't sound like a covers album. And two, it feels like an album, which is very hard to do when you set yourself to put together an album like this, to have that sensation that this is a full-length record. So you definitely nailed it. Now, from a soundscape perspective, I felt that some songs, like, this was not a uniform album. And what I mean by this was, I didn't get the sensation that what you get with the first track is what you're going to get with every single song all the way to the last track. There is some variations, some changes, some morphing, if you will, from track to track. How important was that for you to have that sort of change, but not necessarily completely breaking the fluidity of the album?
Really, really important. I mean, and that's the little stuff that you're hardly in control of it. I don't know if, like, people who listen to a lot of records realize that the hardest thing to do for a band is to do subtle changes. The easiest thing is to do, oh, then they did a quiet song and then they did a loud song, or, they changed their style or what. The hardest thing to do is to get subtle changes within the same style. And that's really tough for me. I'm like, all right, we got to record this thing exactly like we recorded the last one, except the drums have to be a little liver, guitars have to be a little less fuzzy, and there's got to be a bigger pocket for the vocal, because the song itself demands that it be treated like this. And then, like my co-pilot, Bob Pantella, would go, well, I thought you wanted all these songs to sound like from the same record. Yes, but, and everybody's got a big but. The song itself is telling you, back off this or push that. It's really cool to do. And it really, I love making records. So, and this one was more fun than usual because I didn't have to write it. I was just like producer and singer. I was like, woo, this is great.
The album, in my perspective, had two motors, the guitars and your vocals. These are the two main motors. I mean, it's a car with two motors. I love the guitar sound on this record. I mean, it's just absolutely phenomenal sound on every single track, the little changes, the little nuances. I love it. If for somebody who hasn't heard the album yet, how would you define the overall guitar sound that this record has to offer?
Old school tones. I mean, they're really old school tones. I mean, it's a cross between old guitars, old amps, and old effects pedals, and then a little EQ after it. I wanted to sound old, but I didn't want it to sound weak. So a lot of the stuff I reinforced in myself through doubling sometimes, and panning, and to get the biggest bed of meat that I could. I never at one point wanted anyone to ever forget that there are a shit ton of guitars on the record. Like, remind them that there's a guitar. So as I mixed it, it was a battle between vocals and guitar. There's only so much room in the cup for all the sound to come through. So it's like up with the guitar, down with the guitar, up with the vocal, down with the vocal, up with the guitar, to make to use the term in your face. I wanted everything to be in your face. It's dangerous. Sometimes it could turn into absolute shit, but it worked out. Like, it took a lot of time to mix.
And that's why I said vocals and guitars, they're like the two motors of the record, because when one is revving up, the other one revs down a little bit. And then when the other one revs up, the other one revs down a little bit. So
That's exactly right.
So it had that feel. Like, that's exactly what I took from it. And I know you said that you had the vocalist in mind when you were picking these songs, because you wanted to make sure the vocalist could sing. I thought the vocals on this record were just phenomenal.
Oh, thanks. And they're really fun to sing too. That's like, that style.
How much did you prepare?
Surprisingly, not much at all. Like, I knew these songs. Like, dude, I had these songs in my back pocket since I was like 12. Some of them. I mean, it's so weird. It's, I got to tell you, it's weird being this old. I like the Hawkwind, Dust, Jerusalem. That's at least 3 bands. Scientists, and more than that. I bought these songs on those albums when they came out in the like 70s and in the early 70s or late 60s. So I've known these songs my whole life. I don't forget anything musically. I don't forget. So it just, while we were doing the guitars, I would just sit on a stool and watch the guys playing guitars, and I just start singing to see if, just to make sure I could do it. And we didn't have much rehearsal time. And I was like, this is going to be easier than I thought, because it's locked in my head. It's like, I just love it so much. It's already in there.
Is it kind of trippy though? Like, songs that you grew up perhaps singing in your bedroom, now you actually got to sing them on a record.
Totally.
It's kind of,
and it's also like a triumph. It's just like, yes, I remember when I was 13 years old and I bought that Dust album, and I learned, I heard Learning to Die, and I was like, fuck, I would love to be able to do that. And then, okay, so I have to wait 50 years to do it. So I do it.
Hey, it's better late than never. This is one of the silver linings from this pandemic. We got this incredible record.
Yeah, I got to do it more like that. I'm gonna do the next record like this too, in the same place, and just kind of like throw any other kind of considerations aside. I usually try to make each Monster Magnet record a more or less an event into itself. It's sequenced a certain way, and sometimes I get a little carried away with a finer production style, because I think it needs that for a wider listening.
Mm-hmm.
And but now I'm starting to get older. I'm like, it really depends on what the songs need. The songs need to be blown out a little, just leave them blown out. So I like doing this do-it-yourself thing.
I know you're very familiar with the material on this record. Like you said, you've been listening to it since you were a kid. But was there a song that gave you a hard time, some gray hairs, if you will, when you were putting it together?
Yeah, that was the Dust song, Learning to Die, because it's so high. It's a really high register song. And it's not my key, as a singer will say, that ain't your key. So, I mean, what people do in these cases, sometimes lower the key so I could command it better. And I tried that, and it just sounded wrong. And I was like, I'm just gonna have to try it. I may not be able to do it. And it was hard, but I knew it was going to be hard. So I just kind of like rode there to the studio that night going, all right, here's the hard. Of course, I saved it to last. This is going to be the hard one. And if I blow it, we're just going to kick the song off the record and get a new song, something that's easy to sing, which I didn't want to do because I love this song. And just went in there and said to Bob, we better get this in 2 takes because that's all I got, And sure enough, I sang it twice and tried to sing it a third time. My voice was like,
Tapped out.
Yeah, tapped. Well, and these songs, I got to remember, like, I have to always remind myself that I'm not 21. It's weird. It's like you listen to these songs and like, these are kids singing these songs. Like, I'm like a man in his 60s who's been smoking cigarettes for 40 years. There's no way on earth that's going to happen. That's going to be that. But I try to wrangle it my own way and try to put my own spin on it and hope that it works out.
We've been talking about covers, so I have to ask you this question. What makes a good cover?
Depends on what kind of cover you want. I mean, there's covers that makes a great cover because it's a hit. And
no,
it was a hit.
In your opinion, what makes a good cover a good cover?
Well, for Monster Man, it's one that fits in well with the other songs around it, whatever those songs would be, whether they be Monster Magnet originals or other songs. In the past, it's always been whether they fit in with Monster Magnet originals. And, it's all about the juxtaposition of that and another song. And of course, it's got to be a good song, but it doesn't always have to be the greatest song. It just has to be the right song for that right time. That's one way to think of cover. The other way to think of cover is just like, oh man, I got to get people to listen to my song, so I'm going to do something really, really obvious. But that would be a mistake in our case because I'd never be able to live it down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not everybody can be Zach Sabbath. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you just go out and I'm going to do my whole career doing other, it's bizarre. I don't have enough balls to do that.
It takes some serious balls to pull that off.
Yeah. Fuck it. I'm going to be Dave Zeppelin. Can you imagine?
No, next pandemic, we got to make the Dave Zeppelin thing happen next pandemic, because I think, once again, that's the record that nobody knows they need, but everybody would buy it if it was available.
Well, let's not talk about it too much. It's going to incite a million bands. Everybody's going to do it.
That's true. Let's keep this.
I'm Tom Floyd,
Yeah, that would be absolutely crazy. One last question for you, and that is, as you look back now at the experience of recording an all covers album, an album like A Better Dystopia, an album that really represents the times that we're living in really well, what is the main thing that you take away from this experience?
That in music, as opposed to politics, it's good to go with a hunch. It's like, it was a hunch. I just had a hunch. I was like, this is it. I could, and I did think about, I could sit there and try to write an album about my experiences during the pandemic and try to fit that all in. But it was more than a pandemic to me. It was a crisis that began with Trump being in office, like this divorce from reality that we all experience now, and just going like, what the hell, what the hell just happened here?
Yeah.
Everybody's mad. Everybody's screaming. There's no reality anymore. When people start making up terms like post-truth, you're in trouble.
I was going to say, there's like different shades of truth.
You're in trouble when when a term like post-truth is common. So I was like, God damn it, I've been through this before. I was a kid in the late 60s and early 70s, and believe you me, it was out of control. It was worse than it was now. I mean, we had riots every single summer from 65 to like 73, every single summer. Giant riots, way bigger than this. Stuff burning, bombs blowing off, Vietnam War, nuclear Armageddon, Charles Manson, Altamont. It was nuts. I mean, every day the newspaper was just like, I mean, grown-ups were like, I was just like, okay, whatever, this is the way that the world is.
Yeah.
The differences between the two dystopias, if you will, if there was a dystopia in the early 70s and dystopia here in 2020 and 21, is that pop culture reacted in a much cooler way in the late 60s and early 70s than it did now. Pop culture reacted to the 60s and 70s in an immediate way. Music changed like this overnight, Do
you feel like we've touched on this already, but do you feel like people are too concerned about how other people perceive them, that they don't even take the time to just be who they are? They're becoming who they think other people want them to be? You think that's part of the problem?
Yeah, I think that's going on. And I don't blame them. I mean, I don't think humankind was designed to be a surveillance culture. But yet here we are surveilling each other all the time. I mean, it's madness when you think about it. I don't want to know what anybody else is thinking. I mean, whoever had the, whoever thought that the whole world talking at the same time was a good idea was way wrong. That's not, we're not made to, this is like going and picking in the inside of someone's brain on the street. You don't want to know what's going on. I mean, I don't need their opinion. I know. So I think it's part that and part that I don't think that anyone, or I don't think a lot of people have faith in their art expressing themselves, their art alone expressing what they feel, because it's such a type heavy world. It's a word heavy world. There's still art and creation out there, but art has seemed to take a backseat to actual words. So it's like if Mozart had written his greatest symphony and then people just walked in and went, no, like while he was playing it.
Yes.
It's like, dude, you got to shut up. Let art speak, and then you could speak.
Yeah.
But right now, and I think bands are afraid that their art can't carry the day like it did in the 60s. And it's very intimidating. I don't blame them at all. I mean, I gave up any chance of I mean, I narrowed my scope of who I wanted to play to a long time ago. Even back in the fat 90s, I was like, not everybody's going to get it. And I really don't feel like speaking to people who don't get it.
Yeah.
I'd rather be small and potent to speak to people who like it and will listen than to try to get everyone to listen. And I think that's what's going on now.
Yeah, in this thing that it's growing and growing of people telling musicians to stick to playing guitar and leave yourself out. Like, I don't think people understand that art is a representation of who the individuals are and that time and place in which they're living in. So you can't disassociate who you are from the art that you create. I mean, like, to me, that seems so obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most obvious thing. And it's weird that we even have to talk about it, because that, this discussion has already been had and put to bed and all agreed on. I don't know how we slunk back to this horrible thing where it says like, shut up and play guitar. And I go back to, what is this, 1951 now?
Yeah,
hey, the band waits over there. Go ahead and just play your mood music or whatever you do, and then come out. Now go home. I mean, that's the whole reason rock and roll was formed, so people, like kids, could express themselves.
Yeah,
that may be another thing too, which is really important, and a lot of people don't want to hear, is that your mass amount of kids now aren't that cool. I mean, it's not like it's well, maybe not cool, but they've moved on. Kids, not all kids, but the mass amount of kids use art to support their view of their life. They are the own stars of their world. They have a little magazine, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is. This is me. I'm number one. Here's my art. Here's my jams. Here's my favorite shows back there, blah, blah, blah. But it's not like, hey, man, listen to this music and it'll explain me. That's the way it was when I was a kid. I put on a record because I couldn't explain myself. But I was like, if you listen to the music I listen to, you'll probably get a pretty good idea who I am.
Exactly.
I don't think a lot of kids feel that way. It's not their fault. It's just the way the world is, where you're kind of forced into being, people are kind of forced into being B-list celebrities. Like Andy Warhol was right. Everybody's going to be famous for 15 minutes, but he didn't tell us we were all going to be B-list celebrities for 30 seconds. So what can you do about it? Man, the best thing is just turn the shit off and listen to music. Listen to music, listen what the music does to you, talk about what it does to you, and go at, like, maybe not pay attention to everybody's opinion. It's like the phobia of reading comments. And you have to do it all the time. It's your business. You actually have to read comments by people. That's a nightmare to me.
I think the way I always say this to my son, because I have a teenager. And I always say this to him, that the only opinion that matters to me is mine. So I'm too old to care about what other people think of me or say about me. I'm just too
That's a
old for
plus.
that shit.
It's a plus, and you have to get over it. And like, um, maybe this will force kids to, unfortunately, it's like kids don't have enough time to be kids anymore anyway. But if they're going to get serious about doing stuff, they're going to have to get over that too. I think they will. There'll be a whole mutant generation of kids in the future that'll be immune to being emotionally hurt by the internet. Like, I don't care. Of course, 9 billion hate me.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like being a heel in wrestling, right? Like, I mean, there's a certain swagger
Yes.
about being hated.
Yes. Well, Trump found out of that. Trump made a lot of money on that. He's a WWF star. I'm the heel.
He's just a great heel.
Yeah, he's a great. He's an absolute star. Unfortunately, he was the leader of the free world. But holy shit. But yeah, I mean, entertainment wise and popularity wise and just savvy wise, he was a genius at just being like the villain that you love to hate.
Yeah, I say this to my kid is like, it doesn't matter if people are talking bad about me. As long as they're talking about me, that's good enough. As long as you're in the discussion, as long as you're still relevant, that's the main thing.
Yeah, I guess you're right. As long as you don't get dragged down into some horrible scandal not of your own making. Yeah,
it seems to be popping out like every other day. There's something else happening. It's a crazy world we live in.
I know. It's the technology is it's like the Wild West. It's like somebody invented when they invented the 6-gun in the Wild West, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, it changed everything. All of a sudden, it used to be before the 6-gun. It used to be the biggest guy in town was the boss.
Yeah.
When they invented the 6-gun, the fastest guy in town was the boss. It could be a little guy. It could be. So now you're giving, not that one is worse than the other, but now in the world, power is being redistributed to a lot of people that never had power before. And some of them are trolls. They've never had power before. Never in the history of mankind has so many dodgy people who look the other way and don't explain themselves in real life have the power to influence other people. So it's like everybody's playing intentionally or unintentionally in social politics at the same time. It's like, count me out, pal. I just want to go on tour. I like to see people in front of me. And
I'm with you.
We kind of like, who doesn't like you.
Yeah.
You know when you're winning and when you're losing. It's not some weird game of like, I'll get you later, Dracula. I'll stick a cyber knife in your back. Like,
I told you that my last question was my last question, but now you're forcing my hand to ask you one last question. So bear with me on this one. Okay. Monster Magnet has had an incredible history. You guys been around for a long time. Are you worried that somebody's going to dig up something from like 20 years ago and try to cancel you?
Yeah, always. Yeah. Because I did a lot of stuff, man. I totally did. I went into this going, I was a nerd kid who all I did was listen to records and look up to people like Iggy Pop and rock stars and stuff. I wanted to do that. And God damn if I didn't do it. I dove in. And I was like, you only live once. Now, luckily, I wasn't a mean guy or a monster. So I think everyone's happy. But yeah, there are dark events and stuff that would be looked on in today's hyperventilating society. And sometimes, may I say, hyperventilating. And
I want to use that.
Yeah, hyperventilating and so like maybe a little bit sanctimonious and over moralizing, because people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, there probably, if somebody wanted to go out and gather some information that would maybe look like a creep, I'd be guilty. But what are you gonna do? I mean, there's creeps and then there's creeps.
Yeah,
I never thought it was that bad, but these days, it's where the internet does have the power to equal, some poor guy in a rock band that jerks off in front of his his young girlfriend to Harvey Weinstein status. It's really not, they shouldn't be forced to sit on the same bench. All right. What do we got here? We got some guy that jerked off in front of his girlfriend. She was 20 years younger than him. Sit him next to Harvey Weinstein. No, don't sit me next to Harvey Weinstein. You guys are exactly the same person.
Yeah, there's no depth of balance in terms of putting things into perspective. I also don't get that. How can you bring something that happened 20 years ago under today's modern lens? It happened at a time that was perceived in a different way, and that's how it should be perceived now. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's right, like it's right, what was done was right, or like we know better now. Okay, we know better now, but we can't go back 20 years and because the law changed now, like judge somebody for a crime that wasn't a crime back then. You know what I mean?
That's ignoring, that's totally ignoring perspective, context, and historical context, which is a good way to get yourself in a lot of trouble. If you're not aware of historical, social context, then you're lost. You're just a screaming, crying baby that's going, why is the world bad? I don't get it. You know what I mean? You're going to get crushed by reality. There's a reason why this stuff only works with celebrities, because they're the only people that they can pick on. If people tried to moralize against normal citizens, the fucking country would revolt.
Yeah, that's true.
They just pick on celebrities because the celebrities they know they got them in a weak spot. So it's fun to poke them. I think it has less to do with morality than it has to do with power.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of virtual scalping, if you will. Like the people are looking at collecting scalps. Perhaps not the best choice of words by my part, but it gets the message across. I'm going to get canceled now. No, I'm going to get canceled for using these words. But I think there's a little bit of that in terms of people putting a notch on their belt for taking somebody down.
Yes, and who doesn't want to be a good guy? Of course you want to be a good guy. And it's, if it's easy enough to be, if you're going to be counted as a good guy just by clicking something or writing something, that's the easiest way in the world. Fuck shades of gray. The internet's only really good at three things, and that's heroes, villains, and victims. It's not good on anything else. That's what it runs on. Heroes, villains, victims. If you're not one of those three, you're in a lot of trouble. Even if you're a total villain, you can make out good like Trump, or you can make out like Manson. You watch what happens with Manson. 10 years goes by, he'll come back as king of the world and go, I'm writing a book now where I confess. And everybody will go see the movie because they want to see the giant monster.
Exactly.
They want to see the villain.
Yeah.
It's all these people in the middle that are going to get crushed by this stuff. People that had a dalliance, or people that made a wrong decision here and there. And we're not talking like dead bodies or anything, or crying raped women. We're just talking about bad scenes that happen. Those are the people that are getting swept away. And it would be a shame if artists stopped being honest because they were worried about that kind of thing. So I think the people that are involved in quote unquote cancel culture should remember that comedy and art is born of experience and pain. And if they're going to try to start marking down in distinct detail what's good and bad about their experience and pain, they're not going to have much quality art. That's where the quality art comes from. So I agree. Judge the art. I always said, trust the art, not the artist.
Yeah, and I always say this: if you don't like, I'm not a big fan of Wendy's. So guess what? I don't go there to buy food. But I also don't go there, buy the food, and then complain online about how shitty the food is. I just don't buy it. I don't like it. I don't buy it. Period.
I know. I've never seen anything quite like this in my whole life, and I'd like to say I was speechless, but obviously I'm not.
I'm just glad that I'm getting older and this is going to be behind me. I just feel bad for my kid because he's going to have to deal with it.
I think the kids are going to get tough about it. I don't think they're going to put up with this stuff for too long. They got their own lives to look for it. I mean, how much time are you going to devote? When you look back in history, they'll look at this time and going, wow, these people really lost the plot. They were going like this. Like, how long did you do that for? 12 years. Like, what? You did that for 12? Yeah. And then they finally woke up. It's like, no, I don't think the kids are going to wait till they grow up to get smart. I think they're going to get smart on their own.
I hope you're right, and I hope rock and roll plays a factor in that, because I think, at least I see
Me
it in my
too.
house. With my son, I see that a lot of his rebellion comes from the music that he listens to, and I hope that there
Yeah.
is some of that, because otherwise it's going to be a lost world, at least from my perspective. But we're
And
dinosaurs.
like, and even worse than lost, just boring, like just all mediocre and petty. And it's like, I can't, and I'd rather, that's another reason why I like my old dystopia better. At least we had like, if it was going to end, it was going to end in nuclear Armageddon. Lights out, lights out for everybody.
It's going to be big.
Yeah, it's going to be big, and everybody's going to go at the same time, and there's always a chance for the rapture. And this,
I haven't heard that in ages.
remember that, the rapture. But this future is like boring, repetitive, artless, petty,
Soulless. Like everybody's
soulless, arguing over tiny, like picking fly shit out of pepper. No, I don't think it. No, that's not it. No, that's it. I was like, really? But I don't think it'll go that way. I think the kids will save us at one point.
I hope you're right. I really do. I mean, you're right in the music that you make, so I hope that you're bringing a little bit of Nostradamus into this conversation, and you're right about the kids saving us all, saving our bacon.
Yeah, well, I mean, if these guys get anything out of it, a tenth out of it than what I got out of it, which is pure joy and constant motor, like, this is great, putting this stuff together. It takes me out of the commonplace. Art is there for a reason, to keep you sane.
Yeah.
So if they're smart, they'll get more involved with art and less blah blah blah.
Well, David, thank you very much for your time, and I think I went over my allotted time, but
Okay.
I just want to say thank you,
And
and I hope I see you in Toronto very soon once this pandemic
pleasure.
is over.
Oh, me too, man. I think we'll be back next year. No
All right.
problem.
I'll see you here in Toronto. Take care, man. All the best.
Rock on. Rock on. Bye-bye.
Bye.